Oh, 9 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here. Jack, how are you today?
You know, I'm tired. I hate late basketball games.
I do too.
I did not go to bed till because I was also trying to get a little bit of my work done for today, so I really didn't go to bed till after 1 o'clock. And we're here, ready to roll, and boy, do we have something to talk about because I mean. That was what you call a nightmare last night at Colonial Life Arena.
I feel like we need to get the Sandstorm pick-me-up out of the way
I was
first,
just about to say, don't have a cool transition, but just do it.
That is where the positivity for this segment is probably going to come to an abrupt end. So let's go ahead and do that. It is 9 o'clock. Let's hit the Sandstorm pick-me-up.
Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm, sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
Oh, it is time for the 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. You know, at Gamecock sporting events, the amount of times that they play Sandstorm typically is indicative of how well that contest is going. Jack, I imagine there was not a whole lot of Sandstorm being played last night at Colonial Life Arena.
No, I mean, right, tip-off, it was nice hearing Sandstorm, and the crowd that was there was into it. There was a decent amount of white, but still, it's hard to get the average person,
sure,
not a student that gets free tickets. It's hard to get the common folk fan to come to a 9 o'clock basketball game on a Wednesday night. It's cold outside. The team isn't very good. There's a lot of reasons not to go, and so there were a lot of empty seats at tip-off, and as the game wore on, obviously it became less and less of a whiteout, more and more of a, oh, look, there's all garnet back seats everywhere.
It did not look good on TV, and I'll give credit to the student section because they seemed to come out in full force, had the dudes in the chicken suits and all that. You know, they did their part, but everybody else, the common folk fans, there was like none of them in white. It did not. If the TV broadcast did not tell you it was supposed to be a whiteout, you wouldn't have known. And that was my fear, right? And I get it. You're trying to get juice. You're playing the defending national champions. You want to have a little extra energy in the crowd, but yeah, it did not come to fruition last night.
No, I mean, this game got out of hand quickly, and South Carolina never recovered. Oh yeah, by the way, they lost by 47 points last night, which is. There's a lot of different things in the history books it is the largest SEC road victory ever.
Yep.
It is the worst loss in terms of margin of defeat under Lamont Paris. The previous worst loss was a 43-point loss back in year one to Tennessee back in 22-23. And this is now the fifth time that LP's had a team at South Carolina that's lost by 40-plus points. Just think about it. It happened twice in the first two seasons. Didn't happen last year. Now it's happening again this year. I can't imagine how many times a coach has lost by 40-plus points in their career, especially in the first 4 years. But it's happening a little bit more often than you'd think at South Carolina.
Yeah, and last night tied the fourth largest loss in program history. Two other occasions where they lost by 47 was 1999 versus Syracuse and 1914 versus Washington and Lee. So this is the first time this has happened on this side of the millennium, to tell you how bad last night was. And you bring up those other games where they've lost by 40-ish points. I can forgive that in year number one, right? Like, whatever happening year number one under Lamont Paris, I can say, okay, that's year number one of a guy taking a transition from the SoCon to the SEC, and it was Tennessee and a couple other games where they just got bludgeoned. Like, okay, those things are supposed to happen. We're in year number four. This isn't supposed to happen in year number four, let alone happen multiple times in terms of getting beat by almost 30-plus points by Arkansas. saved yourself with some garbage time points against A&M last weekend to make that score look better than it actually was. Like, you've gotten completely bludgeoned 3 times in like the last 2 weeks.
It's just remarkable how this is. At times, South Carolina's look good. Those games against Oklahoma and LSU, great. They've played well, but every other game has just pretty much been, for the most part, a dud. These 3 games against Arkansas, who was it?
A&M.
A&M. They just got killed by them too. And by the way, that margin does not look as bad as it does with the final score. Like it was way worse than that. So, because I mean, A&M was up by 30 points before they called off the Dogs. Right. So that changed things.
And by the way, I want to ask the question for the Firehouse Subs text line. Text in 803-404-6100. How long did you last night? At what point did you give up on this game? Did you either, if you're watching it on TV, turn the channel and watch something else or go to bed? If you were in attendance last night, at what time did you get up and leave? I want to know how much you gave to this game last night and at what point you knew there was no chance that South Carolina was going to win. I got until about 3 minutes to go, and I was like, well, I may as well go ahead and take a shower before I go to bed while the final couple minutes, tick off, and I wait for Lamont Paris to speak post-game. I apparently missed the biggest roar of the night from the crowd when Olivier, what was his name? Rozier?
The 7'9" player.
Yeah, the 7'9" guy from Florida finally took the court. Apparently that's when the crowd popped the most.
Oh, yeah. You even had South Carolina fans that were still there, the few that were still there, going nuts. So that kind of summed it up last night of just this was a one-sided game from the start. And let's give Florida a lot of credit because Florida is a very good team. We knew that going into this one, previewing it yesterday. Florida is everything South Carolina is not. When you look at the size, the bigs that they have, and the athleticism. And that's on South Carolina. That is on South Carolina for not doing a good enough job recruiting in high school and the portal. Like, South Carolina's got some bigs, but clearly they're nowhere on the level of the Arkansas of the world or Florida. It's just a night and day difference how much of a size advantage Florida had in this game. And Lamont, after the game, was not going to just he felt it was not a size issue that lost South Carolina this game. He felt it was more so the lack of effort and aggressiveness, which I can understand, but you got killed in the rebounding battle by 20, which was the fear heading into this game because Florida's the best rebounding team in the country. Florida got second chance points as a result of that. And it wasn't just that. The big surprise last night was just how well Florida was shooting. They shot 60% from the field and went 9 of 21 from three-point range. This is a team that coming into the night was a bottom-tier three-point shooting team at a little over 28% shooting on the year.
Yeah, they were 355 in three-point shooting out of, 360-some teams?
Yes.
Like, legitimately, that is not a part of their game that they count on, but my God, it felt like they made every single one that they shot last night. And here's the thing, as we talked about, kind of yesterday going into this game, Florida's a more talented team. Florida on paper is the better team. And there's no shock or surprise if South Carolina goes out there and loses that game last night. I think the spread was only like 12 or 13 points. And if South Carolina had lost that game 83-70, it's like, all right, well, you just lost to a better team. But it was the effort. And it really seemed like once they got down by double digits early, they just kind of folded. They're like, all right, well, we're not going to come back, so let's go through the motions and let's run this clock out and let's get on to tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, that was a team that outside of Eli Ellis, I'll give Eli Ellis credit, and Coach Paris sang his praises last night as he returned from injury. He gave effort, and he went out there and gave it 110% every time that he was on the court. Everybody else is just kind of like, all right, well, we're not going to win this game. Let's see how quickly we can get to the end of this thing and get it over with.
That's the problem. We are 20-plus games into the season now, 10 games left to go in the regular season, and this is the problem here. Lamont Paris has publicly questioned the effort and criticized the effort of his team multiple times this season. The Arkansas game, this game, those are the two times that I know I've heard him talk about poor effort. That's a real problem, man. That is something that seemingly just cannot be fixed, because anytime this team gets punched a little bit, they just refuse to respond, and that's a problem. They, like last night, you can blame it on the talent and the size that Florida has and just how much better Florida is. But, man, you don't lose by 47 points by accident. Like, you have to be a real bad team and just not really care and not give effort if that's going to be the result. I mean, that's a poor reflection of how this season has gone so far.
Let's call it what it is. This team is a team of losers. They lose. It's what they do, and they've lost in pretty ugly fashion in the last handful of games. Like, they are just a team that loses, and when they see adversity stacked against them, they fold. Like, that's just who you are. And especially at this point in the year, there's no amount of coaching, there's no amount of suicides being run at practice today, or whatever form of punishment Lamont Paris and his coaches want to give to them to try and get that message in. At some point, especially late in this year, you just are what you are. And this is a team of losers that just gives up once they get down too much.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw last night. Like, they folded. And again, were they going to beat Florida? Probably not. Could they have made the game more competitive and closer? Absolutely. You saw it. Like, the paint defense has been a struggle this entire year, but it felt like they were afraid to even try to defend Florida in the paint last night, because they were getting whatever they wanted, killing them in transition, and which I get it. Florida's a really good team in transition, but it just felt like the effort wasn't even remotely there to try and slow them down.
And whose fault is that? I mean,
we know.
Look, I can't blame Lamont for the players' lack of effort, because I feel when I listen to him talk in those press conferences, it's obvious he cares. It's not like he is, because typically, kids are going to be a reflection of the adults in the room, right? And if Lamont's not caring and all that and not giving effort, then the players aren't going to either. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think that is at all the case. But I will say, Lamont is the one that recruited this team, and this is now going to be, we're heading in the direction of 3 of the first 4 seasons under LP just being duds. Year 1 is excusable, but every year since making the tournament, like, South Carolina was so good 2 years ago, and since then, I believe I saw the stat from Bill Gunner last night. South Carolina's won 4 SEC games since last year. That is laughably bad, and
it's unacceptable.
No, I think there is a talent issue. I think there's a big talent gap for sure. Seeing how unathletic and lack of size and just everything that South Carolina is not is what Florida has, and that's and Arkansas did too, and A&M. That's the problem. And you recruited shooters. These guys cannot shoot consistently enough. That's a problem. But the effort thing is really eye-opening, because so that means something is clearly wrong behind the scenes.
Again, let us know on the Firehouse Subs text line at 803-404-6100 how long you lasted watching this game last night at home, in person, or however you ended up taking it in. Also want to get into where this program's at as far as a crossroads right now, because I think last night was really the end of this year, if we're going to be completely honest. Any hope that you had of turning this year into something is completely out the window now. So what happens next, and what's the future going forward? We're going to have to discuss that on the other side. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Felcher along with you here on your Thursday on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on the game, breaking down South Carolina's historic, and not in the good way, 95-48 loss to the Florida Gators last night over at Colonial Life Arena. I posed the question, how long did you last? Whether you watched it on TV, whether you were there in person, whether you're listening on the radio on 107.5 The Game, which, of course, we do appreciate. When did you finally give up? Jamie says, I knew going in that we were going to get blown out. I didn't think by 47, though. I watched the first half just to watch, not hoping we would win. There's apathy if I've ever heard it. Chris says, stayed to the bitter end. Buddy Justin and I were hoping to be the last two non-student Gamecock fans in the building. Came close, made it home in time to watch the Seinfeld reruns on the CW. That was probably a lot more entertaining than the game last night. And then let's see here. Steven says, I lasted the first 10 minutes of the first half. All very reasonable, I would say.
You guys are absolute troopers for deciding to spend your Wednesday night watching this game, because it was just it's just laughable when I saw a clip from last night with the 7'9" guy coming into the game and just seeing CLA, the cheerleaders, all the South Carolina fans just erupt. Like, we did not see that at all throughout the night.
Olivia Roux, sorry, I call him Rosario. It's Olivia Roux, Canadian. I remember when they came last year, just seeing, because he redshirted last year, just seeing him walk around.
He's so tall.
And, like, because anytime, Florida does something good, all the guys jump off the bench to cheer, and, like, he immediately makes every other guy out there looks like a child, right? I saw the picture you took of him next to Eli Sparkman, and Sparkman's, what, like 6 foot tall?
There's, like, a 2-foot difference.
It's insane.
It's crazy. But that's where we were at last night, where you got everybody, the cheerleaders, the fans. I mean, Florida had more fans there by the end of the game, and everyone's erupted just cheering for that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, South Carolina's getting their butts kicked by 47 points. And
you're at the point where the freakishly tall player on the other team elicits more of a crowd response than what your team does on the court.
I'm going to be interested to see what the crowd looks like on Saturday. We're supposed to get some snow. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's definitely going to snow here up through the Carolinas, and I think most of the southeast skin. Now, it's not going to be like a ice warning situation, I don't think, like it was this past weekend, where, of course, you were about the roads being bad. Like, I think it's going to be more feasible to be able to go out and attend the game if you want to. That's the question. Do you want to attend this game? A
Saturday night, 6 o'clock, against LSU, two very bad teams in the SEC.
I mean, they're probably going to win. I think maybe if they try.
Well,
which that's the problem.
South Carolina's got to get off to. We forget about that LSU game and the start that South Carolina got off to. It was going to be impossible for South Carolina to lose that game. Yet they nearly blew the lead. So as long as LSU plays a lot better at the start, LSU probably has a good chance of winning this one. I wouldn't blame anyone if they just decide don't go to the game. It's a 6 o'clock on a Saturday night. It's probably going to be really cold and wintry out. This team gives you no reason to go. And shout out to the fans that have been there, right?
Yeah,
good crowd last night for the most part.
I give credit to this fan base because they probably care more than they should right now about this team because they want to be successful, right? And that's the thing that I've talked about a lot over these past handful of weeks as this team has been struggling, is like the passion of this fan base is crazy high considering historically how little success this program has had. Like, this is a basketball crazy state, and they want to see this team be successful, and unfortunately, they haven't seen a lot of that over the years, and you're certainly not getting it right now.
I will ask the pressing question here, the elephant in the room.
Okay.
If this does continue, let's say they really do finish what they're projected to do the rest of the way, which I believe right now with Ken Pom is 14-17 and 5-13 in the SEC. Assuming they go one and done conference play or in the conference tournament.
Find me those 3 wins, man.
I mean,
where are they at?
The buyout for Lamont Paris is like $12 million, if I'm not mistaken. You got a few years left on that deal, Tyler. I think this season. I mean, last season was really bad, but I don't think we were ever questioning the effort of the team, because that team, despite all their flaws, they never lost this bad.
Well, go ahead.
And when you're publicly hearing your coach talk about how poor the effort was and how lack of aggression there was, like that, we've heard that multiple times now. It just screams that there needs to be a culture shakeup if things are going to continue like this.
Yeah, and last year they started 0-13 in conference play. They did not win their first conference game until Texas on February 22nd. So, yeah, they didn't really fold. They didn't really give up. They were still trying and found the way to win a couple games. And, again, we gave them a lot of credit for that Arkansas game in the SEC tournament where – God, Colin Murray-Boyles went down swinging in his final game as a Gamecock. Like, they left it all out there despite the fact that they just weren't a very good team. But we're not even in the month of February now. We're talking about this team rolling over and quitting. And, look, I like Lamont Paris. I think from a personality standpoint, seems like a good guy. I don't know what he's like behind closed doors at practice and all that kind of stuff. But I do like him as a person. Unfortunately, again, this is a results-oriented business, and you're not getting results right now. And when you don't have results, especially in the SEC, we all know what happens.
Especially when you've been given multiple years. It'd be one thing if South Carolina hadn't made the tournament. I still think this would be heading down the direction of needing to make a change after the season anyway. But you made the tournament 2 years ago, and since then you've done nothing. And that's a problem. Like, coaches don't get to stay that much longer after having seasons like this, let alone in back-to-back years. And unless there is a drastic change in the next 10 games, which I don't expect, this team has shown us who they are, and they honestly might be worse than last year's team because they don't have size at all. Their shooters they're supposedly have, they can't shoot consistently, at least. It's just a recipe for a very bad basketball team, and we'll see what happens. But I really just don't have much faith that this is going to be any better the rest of the year.
And look, again, historically, this program's not had a ton of success. There's only so many tournaments that they just have been to in general. And yeah, they made the one Final Four run, but that was obviously the anomaly, not really, consistent with what this program has been over the years. So when you come here, you don't have to make the tournament every single year. You don't have to make the tournament 4 out of 5 years. You have to make it every now and then and at least be competitive enough to be in the conversation. And since making it 2 seasons ago now, you haven't been anywhere close. Again, 0-13 last year before you won your first conference game, and I don't know what the final result's going to be this year, but it's probably going to be somewhere around that same kind of conference record. So you're not even in the conversation of being close to being in the tournament, and that's where, again, if it continues to trend this way, changes have to be made.
It's just amazing how bad men's sports are at South Carolina right now.
And listen, we're going to get to some bad news about baseball coming up later on. I'm praying so desperately for this baseball team to be good.
Oh, believe
we
me.
need this so bad. Please.
I've seen whenever there is basketball talk, there is usually praying for baseball to be good right down the block. You hope that's the case. I still think they're going to be decent this year. They'll be at least watchable, but this basketball product, I hate to say it. I do not take pleasure in being negative. This is a hard team to watch. It's not fun at all.
I want to get to more of these texts on the other side and also position where Lamont Paris is and how difficult it is to win here given some circumstances and what that means for this program or what it can mean for this program going forward. We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Points. Howard Head and Jack Feltry along with you here on your Thursday on the game, unpacking, again, a historic, ugly, brutal loss at the hands of the number 19 Florida Gators last night over at Colonial Life Arena. Want to get your thoughts more on the Firehouse Subs text line at 803-404-6100. Chicken Curse Guy says, watched every minute of the Florida-South Carolina game, but he is a Clemson fan, so he probably got a lot of enjoyment out of that. So your response doesn't count in the pool of Gamecock fans that I'm kind of polling here. Marshall says, I didn't think I could watch something worse than the Arkansas game a couple weeks ago, but last night was worse. If nothing else, Eli Ellis earned the right to start and to try and run the thing moving forward. I want to actually expand on that a little bit because that is something that Coach Paris did talk about last night when talking to Derek and Casey after the game, was the effort of Eli Ellis compared to the effort of the rest of the team.
No, he was aggressive, that's for sure. And he needs to be aggressive. He needs to be aggressive. And so that was good to see. He got around the basket and finished. He made some good hard attacks off the dribble. Made a couple of shots. And to some degree, that's part of his game. Is once he gets it going, there's going to be a moment where he's testing to see how hot is. And you live with a little bit of that. Yeah. But that was, you're always trying to take some sort of positive away. That may be one. The other one, it's hard to play in those moments like that. But a couple of things. Eli Sparkman comes in and he does a couple of things, passes that were struggling in some ways with some guys, some accomplished players to make those same passes. It just makes you wonder what it looks like for him to get in there. So anyway, we got to get back to the drawing board. That's obvious. And I was shocked that the level of fight was so low, so quick to pack it in once a couple of things in the second half went south. Just quick to pack it in. And that's, again, that's not a good characteristic.
And it's not good to hear your head coach publicly call out his team saying they weren't trying, right? And look, Eli Ellis is not the most athletic guy on this team, but my God, he gives effort. Right, and maybe even extra juice because he hadn't played in the past couple games. But when he was out there and had the ball in his hands, he was trying his hardest. Again, the results are mixed. He had a little run there where he scored 7 quick points. Florida answered every one of those points on the other end of the court because they were so good in transition. But Eli Ellis was not going to slow down or give up. It's just the rest of the team around him, not quite the same way.
No, he clearly cares. And just the way he spoke after the game last night, just how frustrated he was about losing by 40 points and that there's no easy fix to get better from that. And this is just, and then you hear Meechie Johnson on the other side, and Meechie's just beside himself. And I'm not trying to say that Meechie does not care, but there was a clear difference in the responses yesterday, and I think I don't know. Just this is a team that clearly I think some of them just don't care, and I don't know. It's just tough. It's just tough to find good things to say about them when they're getting gobsmacked by 47 points.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to end up finishing. Again, you've already won 2 games, maybe 15th in conference at the end of the year.
No, and that does not warrant South Carolina being much better than they were when they finished in last place last year. This team is just as bad, if not worse, and that's just not acceptable. I get it. South Carolina does not have some winning-rich history in basketball, at least on the men's side. I mean, they made the Final Four a decade ago, went to the tournament 2 years ago, but when you make the tournament, you should be able to turn that into consistent success. They weren't able to do so after the Final Four. Then when they made their next tournament appearance 2 years ago, they haven't done anything since. And that's a problem, and I just wonder how much longer of a leash. You're not going to fire a coach midseason, I don't think. But
I don't think there's a benefit to that. I think you let them ride it out.
But there are going to be some major questions, regardless of what this administration decides to do after the season. Keep him, cut him loose, whatever. this roster has got to improve.
And here's the thing, because I mentioned a moment ago, you're kind of at a crossroads. And look, I like Lamont Paris. I think most people here like Lamont Paris as a person. But again, it's a results-oriented business, and you're not getting the results. And, Lamont Paris has been fighting an uphill battle here at South Carolina from a resources standpoint. We talked about it publicly last year, the reporting out there that South Carolina was spending under $2 million in NIL on basketball, nowhere even in the stratosphere of what the high-end teams in this conference were spending on their rosters. They increased that budget to reportedly around $4.5 million this year, but you're still operating with a fifth of what Kentucky's doing, right? Like you're nowhere near spending the amount of money that you need to truly be competitive in this conference. And you know what? Maybe we need to give more credit to Coach Paris for getting that team to the tournament 2 years ago, considering the discrepancy on what you were spending versus what other teams in the conference were spending. Maybe that's one of the most remarkable things that's ever happened in this program because of that discrepancy. But now you're at a point where if you wanted to keep Lamont Paris for another year, let's say they do reel off a couple wins and end up with 5 or 6 in conference play, and Jeremiah tonight says, you know what, I think that's enough. Let's keep this thing going. You still don't have the belief in the fan base at this point to warrant more money coming in, where they're like, yeah, I believe in this guy. Let's throw some more money at him and see what happens. It's almost like you're in a position where you have to change things to give people belief that something's going to be different to warrant them being willing to give to this program so you can have competitive dollars to spend like other teams in the SEC.
I will just say, money is great to have. But you brought up Kentucky as the example, right? Kentucky's roster is reportedly over $20 million. Well, they just got killed by Vanderbilt the other day, losing by 25 points. And frankly, Kentucky hasn't been that good this season. They played better lately, but this is a team that may very well move on from Mark Pope if things don't drastically improve at season's end. So money is not necessarily...
It's not everything.
It's not everything. Here's the thing about money. You can have all the money in the world, but man, you got to know what to do with that money. And it is clear as day, South Carolina did not know what to do with that money here this past offseason. They got shooters, supposed shooters, but they've been worse than last year from a shooting standpoint. And then you look at, they were not able to replace this front court at all. Losing Colin Murray-Boyles was a big blow. I honestly, you kind of wish you could have just offered him all that money to come back to school. It probably would have been worth it, and at least you'd have a real front court presence. But you were not able to replace your starting front court, and you got guys like Krista Sandico in there last night, Norden Kapich, Jordan Butler. I'm sorry. These guys are not good. Krista Sandico came in last night for his first shot. He gets blocked under the rim. He was just not good last night. And that's your 7-footer. That's supposed to be your enforcer in the paint. He's a bench player. That's what all those guys are that I just listed.
Well, listen, everybody that you brought in from the portal was like, they were just okay, right? There was nobody that you got from the portal that was a dude on their team. There was nobody that was the alpha number one at their respective stops before here, right? They were all okay to good-ish, right? But nobody that we looked at in the portal, besides like Michi Johnson, because we just knew who he was, like, oh, wow, that's interesting, right? Like we looked at their numbers and everybody was okay, but nobody really jumped off the page at you. It was like, wow, man, I can't wait to see this guy play. And you're seeing those results.
It's so, again, as we kind of continue this conversation here, I really do think this is way more than an effort issue. I really think this is just, I don't know. I like Lamont. I don't want to fault him for all the problems here, but he is the coach. He is the coach, and the effort is a reflection of something that he's doing in practice. He said before that you can't coach effort. Okay, true, but why is it continuing to be like this? Why is something not being done about it? Like, I don't know, because it's the same thing over and over again. And when you're questioning it multiple times, it's not working. And then just the talent discrepancy is just it's a huge gap when you see teams like Florida and Arkansas doing what they did to this team, and A&M, and you just wonder why can't South Carolina? It seems like every other SEC team can recruit and get good players to come in, and they probably spend more money than South Carolina. But why can't South Carolina do that?
Got to have the belief. Got to have the buy-in. People willing to give that money. That it's just not there right now. And again, the coaching does have a lot to do with that too. If you don't have the coaching, you don't have the money, well, you're not going to be successful. And that just kind of feels like where you're at as of right now. We'll come back, wrap up the hour, get more of your thoughts as we continue to dissect South Carolina men's basketball. It is The Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Feltry along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is The Extra Point. It's Tyler Head and Jack Felcher wrapping up hour number 1 here on your Thursday on the game. Again, just looking over everything with this men's basketball program after quite literally one of the worst losses in the history of South Carolina men's basketball last night by 47 points to number 19, Florida. Again, tied for 4th largest loss in school history. First time on this side of the this side of the millennium that a loss like that has happened. Getting y'all's thoughts as well this morning. Got somebody weighing in on the live stream. Says the right coach can change the entire culture. Alabama and Auburn were never basketball schools, but Nate Oates and Bruce Pearl changed it. And you're right on that. Both those schools were helped tremendously by bringing in really good coaches like Nate Oates and like Bruce Pearl, but both those guys came in at a time where literally the coach, just having the right coach, could take you places, right? Recruiting, all that kind of stuff, development. Now you also have to have the resources to back it up, and unfortunately, those schools are killing you in the resource department. And again, you're at a point with Lamont Paris where if you were to bring him back, I just don't think there's enough people in this fan base that would have the belief that things are going to change. They'd be willing to give their money saying, yeah, year 5 is going to be different. Like, it comes to the point where for the sake of belief, you almost have to make a change to make people more willing to say, hey, we got a new guy in. I believe in this. I'm going to give what I can to try and make this better. Like, again, I hate that we're having to have this conversation about where things are at with Coach Paris, but it's the reality of the sport now, unfortunately.
You've got to pay to play. That's the way this is going to work. Like I said before, you have to know how to spend that money. Like, you can have however many dollars you want, but if you're spending it on bargain bin type of players, you're not going to win. And look, I think money is one thing, but here's the other thing. If you're not willing to invest in Lamont to give him resources, then quite frankly, move on from him. And if you are going to ever bring in a new coach in the future, you've got to give them the resources to make it work, because otherwise it's going to be just like what we're seeing right now. It'll be no different. Because money definitely helps. And again, like I said, you have to know how to spend the money, but having that extra amount of money would definitely help in terms of getting a guy that might be $1 million player, but you can't afford him and he's really good. So I don't know. I just think it's just, I think they definitely need to figure something out from the financial standpoint of how much, what do they want to actually commit to? Do they want to commit more to this program if it's going to be Lamont Paris here? But if it is a new coach next season, what type of resources are you giving him? Because it's got to be more than what you have right now.
Well, any coach, and again, no decisions have been made on Lamont Paris. We're not saying that it's going to happen. We're just projecting of what typically happens when programs are at the point where South Carolina is. If this offseason you were looking for another head coach, anybody worth their salt is going to come in here and demand a certain amount of money and resources, right? Like, everybody knows what it takes to compete in the SEC, and you're not going to get any good head coach that is going to come here for working with a fifth of the budget of a place like Kentucky or Texas or Alabama or whatever, because they know they're going to be up the creek without a paddle at that point, because they're not going to have the ability to go out and acquire talent like the other teams in your conference are. Like, anybody that's going to come in here and really make a difference probably is going to demand to have a certain level of resources allocated for them.
Yeah, I just wonder, is South Carolina willing to do that, right? Well,
hey, this is where Jeremiah Donati's got to show what he is as an athletic director of, like, hey, garnering that support and garnering those resources that you need to succeed. That's why he was brought in.
He'd garner a lot of support if he were to make a change this offseason. I think fans are ready for that, in terms of, if this thing does not turn around by season's end, it is time to pull the plug. Like, it has just not been a good last 2 seasons after making such history, winning the most games in program history and doing things that they have never done before in a season to this. This is bad. And it's just not it's not good. And you gotta at some point you gotta figure out, okay, where are we heading as a program? Because if you're fine with this, then keep things the way they are. But if you think this can be better, kind of like softball a little bit, right?
Sure.
Where and softball does not get the money that basketball and football do, clearly. But you were ready to invest in softball, firing Beverly Smith. You bring in Ashley Chastain Woodard, and you change the entire culture, give them the resources, and bam, you got a softball team. You were willing to see that you wanted a winning program in softball. Why can't the same be done for men's basketball? I'm not sure. Basketball is one of the 2 sports that makes money here at South Carolina, so hopefully in the near future we're talking about a better program, but right now it's just not looking like it.
You're at a crossroads. Got to decide what's next. We'll get into hour number 2, and unfortunately, we have more bad news to talk about in reference to Gamecock baseball. So we'll get into some of that, what that means for Paul Maneri's team as year number 2 gets set to start here in just a couple weeks. It is the Extra Points. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry with you on your Thursday here in the game.
All right, as we wrap up the hour here, if you are a small business owner, a church, or other entity in need of a new HVAC system, AAA Heating and Air has exciting news for you. AAA now offers financing to qualified organizations to aid them in installing a new light commercial HVAC system. It's as easy as calling AAA Heating and Air for a quote or finding them online at callAAAtoday.com. Tell them Jack Veltri from 107.5 The Game sent you. At AAA Heating and Air, they've got your back. They're offering up to 12-month payment plans on repairs with no credit check required. That's right. No need to worry about your credit score. As long as you're a homeowner with a valid bank account, you'll be good to go. Take control of your comfort today. Call AAA Heating and Air 803-677-1500. Again, the number to call AAA Heating and Air is 803-677-1500. Give them a call today and breathe easy again.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Veltry, Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Thursday on the game. I assure you we'll get to some more fun, lighthearted, positive things as the morning goes along. Unfortunately, our job first and foremost is to report on things happening in South Carolina athletics. And unfortunately, Jack, most of the headlines today are negative.
Yeah, we have another one to talk about. Baseball received a really big blow yesterday. Left-handed pitcher Jake McCoy, who you look at this roster, probably was going to be South Carolina's Friday night ace to begin the season, will miss the year after needing to undergo Tommy John surgery.
And he had not been in the scrimmage for the past couple days. Is that correct?
So
he had an elbow issue. Was it last week?
Yeah. So the way Paul Maneri explained it is he pitched last Thursday in the team's first scrimmage. He was scheduled to throw 3 innings. He only went 2. He came back to the dugout after his second inning of work and basically told Paul that his elbow was feeling a little bit funky, and he asked if he could just rest the rest of the scrimmage, and they got the MRI done, and bam, a torn ligament in that elbow. So that is going to put him on the shelf for the entire season.
Not the news we wanted to hear 2 weeks away from opening day, Wes.
Well, you're talking about 2 years in a row now that what is your projected ace, Jerzenbeck last year, and now Jake McCoy, who, McCoy went into, the summer and had a fantastic performance in that summer league he played in.
Yeah, Cape Cod.
Yeah, and and that's one of, I couldn't remember if it was the Cape, but dude, that's historically like one of the best summer leagues you can go play in, and really, appeared to be taking a step forward. And, I think it really just kind of set up for, all right, he's pitched some to this point in his career, but now he's going to be a veteran. Now he's going to be the guy who kind of leads this staff going into the season. And, an in-state kid, I'm sure that was going to mean a lot to him if he did indeed get the opening day start. And, this is just something we see in baseball right now, though, man. Like, pitchers in general cannot stay healthy. And, I think, I'm personally in the camp of there's been such a push in terms of maximizing people's mechanics in order to throw as hard as you can, and there's just so much stress put on pitchers' arms these days, and they pitch, and I don't know Jake's background in terms of how many pitches he's thrown in his life, but so many pitchers, if you want to speak broadly, you're just pitching seemingly year-round. You just get so many innings on your arm by the time you're his age. We see at the MLB level, like, are there going to be any pitchers, like literally, will there be any successful Major League Baseball pitchers that get to the end of like a 10, 12, 15-year career and didn't go under the knife at some point? Like, it just seems like they all do at some point now.
Well, and now a lot of guys in high school are doing it like as preventative, right? Getting it ahead of time to go ahead and repair that ligament because it's going to end up, snapping at some point because, again, it is so much about velocity these days, and we've improved so much in training and medicine and all this kind of stuff, but the human body is still telling us it is not meant to throw an object that hard over and over and over again over a long period of time.
No, totally. And for a guy that throws 96 to 97 miles an hour, there's a lot of stress on that arm. And look, there was a lot of excitement about Jake after the summer he had in the Cape Cod League. Pitched really well. He added a changeup to his pitch mix to become a 3-pitch pitcher, and that sounded like it was going to be the big difference this year for him. And Paul spoke about him being the potential leader of this staff, but now you're going to have to resort to other options, and you're going to have to really find somebody that can take on that role that Jake was going to command this season.
So I know Riley Goodman and Amp Phillips were 2 other names that were looked at as potential other starters for the weekend rotation. So if those are the two of the guys and you're talking about moving one of them up, and now you have to find out who that third guy in the rotation is going to be, from what you've observed so far, who are some of the names we need to look at for that?
So actually, Paul did speak about it on, again, a lot of what I'm referencing comes from the Fan Upstate interview that he did yesterday with those guys over there. He said that there are 4 guys that are now finalists for those 3 spots in the rotation. So that's going to be Riley Goodman, Alex Philpott, Josh Gunther, and who's the other name?
Amp.
Amp. Thank you. So Amp Phillips, Philpott, Goodman, and Gunther. So if you're asking me, I think it is going to be – see, it depends on what game South Carolina views as the most important to win on the Friday or Saturday, because I think that's going to be the game where we see Phillips pitching. That can mean Alex Philpott is your opening day starter if South Carolina views the middle game of the series, a chance to win the series, even the series up, as the most important game. So I think we're going to see Philpott, Phillips, and then Goodman. And I think this is a great opportunity for a guy like Riley Goodman, a freshman, first year post-Tommy John surgery, getting his feet wet in college baseball, a chance to really see what he can do, because I saw him pitch in the fall. He's really good. And then with Gunther, I'm kind of surprised that South Carolina's tried to make him into a starter, because he made a few starts in the Cape Cod League this summer and just didn't really perform too well. And historically in his college career, he's been a relief pitcher. Matter of fact, he was Wake Forest's leading saves leader last season as their closer. So I think he's better, because Paul also said whoever doesn't make the rotation is going to be in the bullpen. So I think it makes the most sense for Gunther to pitch out of the bullpen, because I still think, from what I've seen, I think you need another back-end middle relief guy. I think Gunther is that guy, and then the other 3, Philpott, Phillips, and Goodman, would make up a pretty quality rotation.
What do Gamecock fans need to know about Riley Goodman? I feel like among the, I guess, returners to this roster, because he's a freshman, he's a redshirt freshman, right? He redshirted last year. He is a guy who has generated, I would say, quite a bit of attention even outside of Columbia. Like I've seen some of the national guys mention him, and that there is some excitement about his ability, just the stuff, like the upside here. Is he someone that could come seemingly out of nowhere, just and I say that meaning that he obviously hasn't pitched at Carolina yet, and be like not just a starter but a successful starter in this league? Like, what is it about him that he's been able to generate a little bit of buzz?
He could definitely surprise a lot of people. I've seen some folks say that he's got SEC Freshman of the Year potential, and I wrote it down in a story I posted this morning, kind of explaining what McCoy's injury means for the Gamecocks, but also for the weekend rotation. I did write it down, quote, if there's any pitcher with as good of stuff as McCoy, it's probably Goodman with his mid to upper 90s fastball and good off-speed pitches mixed in. And I saw him in the fall a lot. Very good pitcher. Didn't give up a single run. Was typically hitting upper 90s on his fastball. Just really good command. Now, in his first outing of the preseason last week, I was not there, but I did see that he plunked, I believe he had 4 hit batters and seemed to really struggle a little bit with his fastball command. I'm going to chalk that up to just being the first preseason scrimmage that he's throwing in, and these guys having some time off and whatnot. So hopefully we'll get to see him pitch either today or tomorrow in the next scrimmage, and we'll see how he does then. But this is a guy that can really pitch well. I think he's got a lot of good zip on his pitches, and he's got strikeout stuff. So I'm very excited about him. I just think you could either put him in the rotation or the midweek. I think there's really no difference, in my opinion. It's better to just get him in the rotation on the weekends right out of the gate, because your first 2 weekends you're playing Northern Kentucky, and then you're going to be playing one of the service academies in the second weekend, and then you get Clemson after that, and then it's right back to one more weekend of an easy non-conference opponent before you get into SEC play. So he'll have a lot of time, I think, to really develop and kind of see what he can do on weekends before competition really picks up in March.
So that was the news yesterday. Jake McCoy lost for the year. Again, your projected Friday night starter there, so got to figure out the rotation. And as we've learned earlier on today, David Kloniger of the Post and Courier, Now questions about Bo Holland's health to start the season.
Yeah, so with Bo, there is a lingering shoulder injury, which has kept him out for the entire preseason so far. He has not scrimmaged yet with the team, and from what David asked Paul yesterday, Paul basically put it as, I'm paraphrasing here, that he doesn't know when Bo is going to be back, and even when he returns, it's going to take a little bit of time to get back into baseball shape and be ready to play every day. And this is supposed to be South Carolina's starting first baseman. So I don't know the exact extent of this injury. Apparently it was a freak thing that happened. And right now, last week when Paul met with the media for Media Day, he said Bo is going to be the starting first baseman for this team. But I can't help but wonder if that is going to change. Honestly, I think it will. I don't see Bo playing on opening day unless something changes between now and then. Like if he's starting to scrimmage this week and is getting ready to go, then that may give him an opportunity to be ready. But I think right now you're probably looking at Will Craddock or Patrick Evans potentially being that first baseman come opening day. Paul's talked about before that Evans is one of the best 9 players on this team position player-wise, and that they have to find a way to get him in the lineup. This is your opportunity. Play him at first base and go from there. So it's unfortunate because I think Bo had a really nice season last year stepping up as a freshman, but he's had these injuries ever since the summer, and he barely played in the fall, hasn't played so far this preseason, only played a few games with the Blowfish in Lexington over the summer. So it's he's got to get healthy. That's the main thing. And South Carolina's going to need him this year, but I feel good about saying he probably wouldn't play on opening day if the season were to start here today.
Please, no more injuries. Only got 2 more weeks until opening day. Let's keep everybody healthy.
Yeah, that'd be nice, but it's next man up. That's why you have a big roster, and this is why you recruited a lot of these players, is to have a chance to step up and take advantage of that opportunity.
Let me just say, Gamecock Nation, I'm sorry.
It's a tough time.
It's a real tough time.
Seriously,
we just spent the whole first hour talking about basketball, man. It's
y'all
been a
talked
rough
about
morning. Yeah, we spent the whole hour on it.
Yeah, we're good on that now.
It's been a rough week for Gamecock Nation. I get it, man. It is tough. I'm sorry. I'm not even gonna get on you for being mad or doing mean tweets. Like, I get it. It's frustrating. Now I will say this. Let's not give up completely on the baseball season before it even starts.
No,
let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. I mean, you're talking about, for the most part, a completely rebuilt roster, and we saw it in basketball this year so far. I don't really see it turning. It is hard to rebuild an entire team, save a guy here or there via the transfer portal. It just is, and make it all come together. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is a difficult way to do it. So
it's tough.
It's tough, man.
Yeah, definitely for opening week, you're going to need to have the program handy to know who's who, because pretty much this entire team is almost brand new from what you had a season ago. Which, again, that's what Maneri said he wanted, to overhaul the roster, did that, and we'll find out here in a couple weeks if it ended up working or not.
Yeah, and this is his team. It's clear that this is now his team, his guys. So it's no more excuses. It's time to put up or shut up, and we'll see if this team, barring any more injuries, can stay healthy and have a good season here.
Let's talk about some fun things on the other side. How about that? It's been a lot of negativity this morning so far. Some of the funnest games in college football in 2025. ESPN's released their list. We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in, Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher, Wes Mitchell on your Thursday here on the game. If you're looking for some positivity, women's basketball in action tonight, taking on Auburn, 9 o'clock tip, pregame coverage starting at 8:30 on our sister station in B106.7 FM. So hopefully we can get some positive things going for this week with a nice women's
A 9
basketball
o'clock
win.
tip, not a positive.
Not a positive. No, that was unfortunate last night. I did ask the question earlier of how long people stuck around for the game, and some people tuned out in the first 10 minutes. Some people made it all the way. But, yeah, definitely not worth staying up for, unless you just wanted to see the 7'9" guy get on the court at the end. Then you got your wish, but that was about it.
Yeah, that was
The box score
rough.
is possibly just as brutal as what your eyes saw if you stayed.
So sometimes you can watch a game and look at the stats, be like, well, the stats say it was closer than it was. And it's not the case last night.
No.
They shot 25% last night. Florida in the second half shot borderline 70%, Tyler. Like, that's insane for one team to do, let alone in a half.
Yeah, I know. It seems like everything they put up went in. Chinaloo dominated in the post. God, they looked like the defending national champions last night. It was ugly.
0 second chance points for South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
3 points for South Carolina off fast breaks compared to 32.
Yep, got murdered in
for
transition.
Florida. 54 points in the paint versus 20 for South Carolina. 0 minutes of the game led for the Gamecocks. Almost 39 and a half minutes led by Florida. 0 lead changes. 0 times tied, other than when it was 0-0, which doesn't count in the box score.
And you got down double digits pretty quickly, and it was kind of over from there.
And Florida scored in a half what South Carolina scored in the game.
Oh, they scored more in the paint than you scored the entire game.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Okay,
brutal.
sorry. You were gonna talk about some
Yeah, you guys
positive.
ready for positivity?
Some
fun
some
things.
positives. Yes. What is your guys' like number one game of this college football season? Do you have one?
Man, there were a couple. The both Ole Miss Georgia games were fantastic for me. I need to pull up this list and tell you what my favorites are. What about you, Jack?
Trying to think. There are definitely some good games on here. I was thinking back to it. The Florida State-Virginia game where Virginia upset Florida.
When we
State.
thought that was a big win at the time.
That was a good game. Georgia-Tennessee was a good game. Obviously, the national championship was a very good game. Although I don't know if that would be my number one game of the year. It was a great game, don't get me wrong, but
Well, do you, and because Bill Connolly put it as the number one game on his list on ESPN, do you have to give it more weight because of the stakes?
I think that's why it's number one, purely because it was a close game and it's the national championship.
And it's, like the NFL, more often than not, the Super Bowl's pretty competitive, and not every Super Bowl's a barn burner that we talk about as an all-time classic, but most of the time it is a game that's only decided by one or maybe two scores. The national championship is very different. We've seen a lot of blowout national championships, games that just kind of get one-sided, or even games that aren't blowouts but aren't super competitive. Like, rarely do we come to the end of the year and make a legitimate case that, oh, the national championship might have actually been the best game of the entire season. But what we saw last week with Indiana and Miami does make a solid case for that.
It does, and I think so. Your list is going to be different than my list. It's going to be different than his list because, you maybe aren't necessarily in a position to where you sat down and watched every single one of these games cover to cover, So, to me, yet not quite the weight of the national title game, but the Ole Miss Georgia game part 2 in the CFP quarters, to me, was like, 'cause for one, I got to sit down, I watched it beginning to end. It had everything. Seemed like it was going to be maybe even a little bit more of a defensive-oriented battle early on. To me, there's something about games that kind of settle in one way, and then as the two teams start kind of counterpunching, it starts to go completely off the rails. And, then you get big plays. You have, big defensive scores. Special teams get involved. That game just had everything for me. And it just was more of like a back and forth, true, like, who's going to win this? Like, the national title game was a good game.
Sure.
But if you took out the national title part, I don't know if it would be top 10 on this list.
Yeah.
And so the fact that this Ole Miss Georgia game was in the playoffs, so there's some gravity there. This game mattered as well. And then you just had, I like great performances. And for Trinidad Chambliss just to do what he did on the stage that he did it was pretty amazing to watch. So that was probably my favorite personally game of the year. I'm actually kicking myself. The one game that I could have watched and I just didn't, and it was completely off my radar and ended up being a fantastic game was the FCS championship.
That's right.
With Montana State beating Illinois State 35-34. And I didn't watch a single snap of it, and apparently a lot of us missed out.
It was.
Did you watch it, Tyler?
Yeah, I did. It was everything you could dream for in a football game, just about. And again, you consider the stakes of it being a national championship that made it that much better. And it is up here on this list as well, inside the top 5. I like the Georgia Ole Miss game and the Ole Miss Miami game are kind of like so similar. It's almost hard to choose between the two. I might lean more towards Ole Miss and Miami just because it is a semifinal that was punching your ticket to the national championship. Which, by the way, for the history of the college football playoff, we've been treated to so many duds, and there were certainly some duds this year. It is nice to see that some of these games did end up being really competitive, and at least in the game of the year category that we could talk about in this way.
Yeah, it's been fun, man. I think this has been the best playoffs that we've had, I think, just in terms of entertainment value, both for college football and the NFL this year, actually combined. It's been phenomenal. I liked the Ole Miss game, the Ole Miss Georgia game, better than the Ole Miss Miami game, just because I always love that moment where it seems like a game may be over, or like one team takes the lead late or ties it up late, and you're going, all right, there it is. And then the other team answers back to then score again themselves. So I put that one, like Miami, Ole Miss did get themselves in position to like throw basically a Hail Mary at the end of that game.
Yep.
But Miami scores and they end up winning the game. In the Ole Miss Georgia game, if I'm remembering it right, Georgia's down there. They're trying to score to win the game, and they end up having to kick the field goal instead. And then you're going, all right, this game is probably going to OT, but then Ole Miss answers back. Games that just have that pure, just like back and forth down, the final stretch, so to speak, are, to me, the most entertaining. And unfortunately, boys, the Gamecocks did make this list for you guys can guess which game.
Actually, they made the list for 2 of these games. So A&M, that loss was number 11, and then the Alabama loss was number 31. Tough.
Not the reason.
No, you don't want to be on this list in the L category.
Yeah, the South Carolina LSU game 2 seasons ago, I gotta imagine was on. If he did a top 100,
it would have had to have been up.
It would have been like a top.
Yeah.
Probably borderline top 5. Like, if you were just a casual observer,
sure,
that game had everything, a big comeback, some controversy, reasons to talk about it, some stakes. Like, that was probably a top 5 game that season. Clemson getting beat by Duke also made this list pretty high. Clemson getting beat by Georgia Tech made this list at number 26.
That was a good game, too. Jack, any further thoughts?
The A&M South Carolina game, that was if it weren't South Carolina, I'd probably say that would be close to number 1, just because of how crazy that comeback was. It was 30-3 at halftime. That's unbelievable, man.
It was a game that the majority of people probably weren't planning to watch that day, But when you see the halftime show, like, oh man, Carolina's going to pull the upset, and then you just watch the collapse happen, and that becomes even more entertaining if you're just a casual observer. So, yeah, hopefully Carolina can appear on this list next year for wins, not losses. Speaking of next season, I think I may have found the best couple of weeks of the 2026 college football season. We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating here on the game.
All right, guys, this show brought to you by our friends at Krantz Cooling and Heating since 1983. Family-owned, family-operated. Head on over to KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, cooling with a K.com. Or give them a call, 803-672-3224. Winter weather, obviously, in the area this past weekend, supposed to be in the area this coming weekend. Go ahead and give them a call about preventative maintenance. Make sure that your heating or cooling unit is in top shape before you have an issue when it is super cold or super hot outside. Of course, if you do get to the point that you do have an issue, call Krantz right away at 803-672-3224, or you can even go on that website to schedule an appointment. They're going to come out, get you on the list quick, make sure you get taken care of, and make sure that your home is warm again just as quick as you need it. So, again, that number, 803-672-3224, and ask them about their financing specials today.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Veltry, and Wes Mitchell with you on your Thursday here on the game. You know, we talk about it so much that with how much changes every offseason, you never know what team's going to be. And we looked at, you know, so much of last year in college football and said, you know, Clemson's going to be good, Penn State's going to be good, Texas is going to be good, and projecting of what big matchups those teams were going to be having. And Texas ended up having a solid year, all things considered, but not quite to the level of, you know, being the number one team in the preseason poll. Do y'all remember what week of the college football season last year was supposed to be like the week that we were all supposed to be looking forward to and couldn't wait to see all these matchups and stuff?
I don't remember which week it was, but I remember that pretty much every single team that was the reason for it being the biggest week, by the time we got there, was like not even sniffing the top 10.
It was like the Ole Miss week, right, for South Carolina?
It was November 1st, so that was week number 10 last year, where Ohio State and Penn State played that day. That was at the point where Penn State was 3-4 coming into that game. They'd already fired James Franklin. Again, South Carolina and Ole Miss played each other. That was supposed to be a top 15, projected matchup. Let's see. You had what else? You had Southern Cal and Nebraska for that weekend. Let's see. Oklahoma and Tennessee was a preseason ranked matchup that ended up still being a ranked matchup by the time they got there. Georgia Tech and NC State was supposed to be a pretty good game. Georgia and Florida. Florida had already fallen off and had fired Billy Napier by that point in time. So what was supposed to be this great weekend ended up, I mean, there were still good games, but not quite to the level of, oh, my God, this is the blockbuster weekend that it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I know you're totally right, and that's just how it goes, though. That's why these rankings at the beginning of the year don't mean much, because we don't know what these teams are really going to be. Everyone was wrong about South Carolina being the 13th best team in the country coming into the year, and we saw that turned out. There were other teams along that same accord that really struggled, but hopefully heading into 2026 here we get, and don't get me wrong, we still got a ton of good football in 25.
And look, there were teams we didn't expect to be good that ended up being good that created a lot of compelling matchups. Like it ended up being Texas and Vanderbilt playing that weekend too. We didn't think that was going to be a ranked-on-ranked game, and it was, and obviously ended up being good with Texas winning that. So it's just the perception of what the season was supposed to be in certain teams changed throughout the year. By the time we got there, it was like, oh, this weekend wasn't what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I think in some ways you don't want a season just to go the way it's scripted on paper. You know, like you want, to an extent, for there to be surprises and for there to be teams that overachieve and underachieve. And, you know, of course, I think with the transfer portal and the fact that these rosters are just such a year-to-year thing now, it's always been somewhat difficult to project teams on like an individual basis, but now, I mean, it's going to be borderline impossible. And you're going to have, now I think the great part about it is, you know, you're going to have differing opinions kind of across the board on teams. Like there won't be as much consensus, I think, which is good.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, South Carolina was 13 entering the season last year, according to some people. But there were also people that had them outside the top 25 and got just ripped for their thought process.
Yeah.
You know, I think Brett McMurphy was one of the big ones. I think maybe our guy, Greg McElroy, had questions about South Carolina and just got hammered for not having them in the top 25. And so, you know, I think now you're also going to have South Carolina, to be specific about them, will be in a spot where last year maybe people who were unsure gave them a little bit more benefit of the doubt going into the year. This year, if you're a little bit unsure coming off of the 4-win season, you're probably not going to give South Carolina that benefit of the doubt. It's going to be more like, let's make them earn that spot. And, you know, I think you're going to naturally see the college football media do what they've always done, which is kind of start the rankings off based on last year and assuming you don't lose your entire team. But there's going to be more turnover in terms of what you are as a team and a program. And even the hard part, I think, is what we talked about on Gamecock Central Takeover. I guess yesterday, the day before, you can judge the ability, you can judge the talent to an extent, but which teams are able to maintain their locker room? Which teams are able to maintain that leadership? It's going to be borderline impossible when you're talking about judging 100-plus teams every year and then setting the expectations for them.
So, again, the perception of teams are going to change a lot between now and when these games can be played. But now that all the Power Four conferences have released their schedules, I think I found maybe the best weekend of the season this year. It's also going to come in November. It's going to be the weekend of November 7th. So here's the matchups for that weekend. Alabama and LSU should be good. Georgia and Ole Miss. BYU and Utah. We have Miami and Notre Dame. Rematch there. Let's see, Oregon and Ohio State that weekend. Probably big noon kickoff, I would imagine. Those kind of the headliners.
What week is this, Tyler?
Week 10. That is
week 10.
November 7th.
Okay.
Like on paper, that sounds like the best weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just for the headline games alone. There's, other games kind of in the middle there that could be interesting, like Texas and Missouri and stuff like that. But the headline games alone, like that seems like a really good weekend of football based on what we think right now.
Yeah, I think we got some winners there, man. And, it'll shift. But I think you've got some teams there, too, that are, I think coaches that are starting to get into that point where even if they've been successful, people are going to kind of be going, like, what's next? What is the upside for this program, which makes it a big year for Oregon, for example? Like, I think we all think Dan Lanning's a great coach. I think he's done a phenomenal job there. He's won a bunch of football games, but naturally, people are going to start to say, hey, when can Oregon take the next step? They bring back Dante Moore.
Mm-hmm.
He'll go into next year. Will Dante be considered the best quarterback and the best returning quarterback in the country?
Probably.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's some pressure that comes along with that. I guess Julian Sayin would be up there as well. But he's in the conversation, let's say, for number one quarterback in the country. So I think there's going to be no shortage of fascinating storylines going into the next college football season. And even though we all don't like certain aspects of where this thing is headed, college football this past season delivered on the storylines, the drama, the great football games, and people were still tuning in.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I mean, there are a lot of good games throughout. I mean, yeah, people were definitely tuning in throughout the year, and it was a good season. But you are hoping this slate here. I think you're right, Tyler. I think this slate here in Week 10 of the season is going to be. It's got a lot of good matchups on paper, but we all know things can change between now and November.
The second best weekend I've found, this is actually the weekend that Carolina has their bye, which is October 17th. So that weekend, you'll have Alabama and Tennessee. You'll have Notre Dame and BYU, and you also have Ohio State and Indiana playing each other, just as kind of the headline games of that. So for at least Carolina's bye week, you can look forward to what should be those marquee games.
Who would have ever thought that you'd be talking in the preseason 9 months before the season, 8 months before the season, Indiana as a marquee matchup? But here we are.
Here we are.
Also didn't think we'd be talking about how much you would pay for Indiana national championship attire from the actual game or equipment from the game. But some of these things are going for a pretty hefty price. We'll discuss that coming up next to wrap up the hour. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Wrapping up the hour here on your Thursday on the game. Again, we are just a little over a week and a half removed from Indiana winning its first national championship in football in program history. And, of course, there's always a lot of excitement when it comes to first, especially when it comes to championships for a program like Indiana. So people want to snatch up as much memorabilia as they can. Are you guys like memorabilia, sports memorabilia guys? We have a collection of, like, game used worn things or things that are special from your fandom at home.
I don't. Like, it's kind of one of those things for me, though. I've waited so long.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wish I had been collecting things over the years. And I even, like, I have media passes from, like, you know, College World Series and stuff like that. And
Sure.
Obviously, I've been around a lot of athletes. Like, I kind of wish I had built up just periodically a little collection, and I've waited so long to start it that I feel like it's just a lost cause.
Jack, what about you?
Yeah, I don't have anything like that. I do have some mementos from different games that I've got, like credentials, obviously, is the main thing. I have from South Carolina's bowl trips. I do have a. I still feel I feel crazy to even say this. I have a jar of Duke's mayo with the South Carolina UNC logo on it from the 2021
As you should.
Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Is the mayo still in it?
It has not been touched. I have not touched it. And I even have the jar of mayo from the 23 season opener with the Duke's Mayo kickoff game. And then I have the box of Cheez-Its from the Citrus Bowl, which
So
has
you're just collecting food mementos.
well, yeah, but it's the stuff that they give you when
Right.
you're there. But besides that,
Never
no,
open those mayo jars.
No, at this point, no, it's not happening.
Do you have any jerseys?
Do I have any jerseys? Like, no, like now that I know of, no, I don't think so.
You mean like jerseys like that he wears?
Like, what do you
Like jerseys?
Like, what do you mean? Like game worn jerseys?
No, just like jerseys.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we know.
Oh, yeah,
we
you're
know
so
Jack
funny,
has a
yeah.
closet full of jerseys.
Yes, I do. I didn't know what you meant by that.
So
Jack's wearing a jersey right
Jack
now.
is wearing a what jersey is that, Jack?
It is a throwback Islanders jersey.
Okay, neat. I
Okay,
bring this up because Indiana is auctioning off items from the national championship game that you can go to bisondrop.com. Not sure why that's the name of the website, and bid on these things. If you're an Indiana fan and want a piece of obviously the history of the program, the biggest one here is Kurt Signetti's game-worn headset from the national championship. Do you guys want to guess what the current bid for this is right now?
$50K.
Jack?
It's way lower. It's go ahead and just say I'm looking at it right now.
$16,000 right now. Now the bid's not over. It started at $4,000. It's going up, but right now currently
It'll be $50K
$16,000.
before it's over.
Probably. And again, it does verify.
When does it
game worn.
end?
February 8th.
Yeah, you still got a couple more days, so it'll continue to go up. And I'm looking at this, and, you know, some pretty routine things. You can get a bottle from the sidelines, a towel, and some of these things do say game worn on there, so you know that somebody wiped their face with this towel at some point during the game. By the way, current bid for the towel is $720 if you want that. We don't have a bid number yet for the Gatorade bottle. They're accepting entries at this point in time. But I scrolled down, and I came across perhaps the most interesting one. Do y'all know who Bryant Haynes is?
Do not.
He's the defensive coordinator for Indiana. His game-worn belt sold at auction. Now, they don't have the price, but somebody bought the defensive coordinator's belt from the national championship.
I just think this is very smart by Indiana.
Of course it is.
Because people are going to pay for it.
Like, let's milk this thing for everything that's worth. Very, very sharp thinking here. I'm trying to put myself in their shoes if I was an Indiana fan. I don't know if any of this stuff does it for me.
Would you buy Clayton White's belt if South Carolina won the national championship?
Like, what belt is this that we're talking about?
Like the belt holding up his
belt.
pants.
Well, no, I know, but like, it's a belt. Like,
Yeah, it's a belt.
Like-
It's got the IU emblem on it. And
okay,
I
all
don't-
right. Well, that's cool then.
I'm sure it's made by Adidas because
That-
they're an Adidas
yeah.
school. But
That's more so what I meant. Like, what is so special about the belt other than it being worn?
They
by,
wore it.
But I get it. But it's no different than the belt you could probably find at a store. But since
It was in the national championship game.
But he clarified it
got
has the
the
India
aura.
logo on it.
Do I get a certificate of authenticity of like this held up my defensive coordinator's pants during the game? Like,
Probably.
does he have to sign off on that? Because like, this could have been the Water Boys belt for all we know, and I'm not going to know the difference. Like, does Brian Haynes autograph this thing?
Like, you need that certificate of authenticity. Otherwise, it's worthless.
I think the coach needs to autograph. I actually think whoever any of these are coming from, they need to be signed in order to say, like, yes, this is legit. This stuff doesn't do it for me at all. Now, you know what would be cool for me? If you somehow would give me, you remember the Clemson Carolina game 2 seasons ago when South Carolina did that great video, and for the game-winning drive, they had the actual the headset audio of the coaches talking to each other.
Yeah.
Like if you could somehow, like the headset means nothing to me.
Right.
If you could somehow give me, if I could buy a national championship video and listen to the coaches like on the headsets
For the
like,
whole game.
like behind the scenes play calling, stuff like that. I would love, even if you said, hey, we're gonna do, you can't take this home, but you can go sit in a theater and listen to the game through their lens. That does it for me.
That'd be sick.
If you want to get your bids in for Kurt Signetti's headset, get him in. Got 10 more days. $16,000 currently.
Jack just bid. I saw him.
Yeah, Jack wants it. I'll do it for the Garnet Trust Hour. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour up next here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Wes is giving me the thumbs up. I did everything right. Did anything wrong?
You did.
All good?
I am Wes. He is
Slight
Chris.
pause just to make sure.
There's Tyler. Gamecock Central Takeover. And it is Thursday.
It is Thursday.
Ding, ding, ding.
Unfortunately, guys, we do have to talk about what happened last night at Colonial Life Arena. I want to do something different here. We're going to start off with the
Please do.
We're going to start with the old compliment sandwich, okay? We're going to have a good, a bad, and a good as we discuss this game. So the good last night, got Eli Ellis back from injury. Went out there, he played hard, gave the usual Eli Ellis effort. That's good. The bad, you played perhaps the worst game of the Lamont Paris era and quite literally one of the worst games in program history. But the crowd energy seemed good last night, and the people that did show up in white to attempt to participate in the whiteout did their job. It's about all I got, guys.
That was a valiant effort, man. Which is more than you can say for some of the guys on the court last night. Like, just to be completely honest, Lamont Paris questioned the paraphrasing the drive of some of the guys and the effort level of some of the guys. And, man, you don't get beat by 40-plus points and feel like you gave great effort. It doesn't happen, man. And this was a game that pretty much was over from the moment it started. To your point, Tyler, we the student and I mentioned this. Hey, the students chance to get back out there and go to a basketball game. They will probably show up and show out. I'd say kudos to the students, man. They were there. They were loud. They were trying to create something last night. It obviously it did not happen at all. And it was just a dominant effort by Florida, man. For everything you can say about South Carolina doing wrong, I thought Florida did it right. And, they shot the basketball well. They had great effort. They just had, frankly, just better athletes. And they came in and played like they were supposed to. Meanwhile, South Carolina, Chris, 0 second chance points from South Carolina. Florida won the fast break battle, 32 points to 3 points, and Florida won the points in the paint battle, 54 points to 20 points. And the box score kind of just sums up what you saw on the court.
Well, and I, Tyler, if we're going to give, I do respect the effort on the compliment sandwich.
I tried.
The only thing, I think positive I could point out about the game, which is absolutely inconsequential, to be honest. South Carolina, once again, is a lead at shooting free throws, right? Like because that's been a conversation in years past. They're 15 of 17, 88%. But, man, then you dive into, literally everything else in the game. What were we talking about yesterday? If South Carolina is going to beat Florida, if South Carolina is going to go on a run and have any shot at turning this thing around and making this season into, something that's, been tracking as maybe a lost season, and make it a conversation, make it interesting. They had to shoot better. Some of the other things, incrementally, can you defend better? Can you get a little bit more in the paint? Can you rebound better? Those things obviously would have needed to improve as well. But the biggest thing is just shooting. The thing that this team has been built on, it's been said before the season, early season, at many points during the season. Lamont Paris has gone up to the podium, talked about how this team has been built to try to shoot the ball, to shoot a high volume of three-pointers, and everybody knew they were going to have to make those shots. Well, once again, not only are you 26%, 15 to 58 shooting for the game. You can't win a game shooting 26%. I wonder if that's ever even happened in basketball. Probably not. Once again,
that'd be a real bad game to watch.
You take 23 pointers, you make 15%. For a team that's built to shoot, you can't shoot 15% from three and win a game. especially with all of the other deficiencies that we've seen that have been issues that, hey, how are you going to overcome those? Shoot the basketball well from long range. They didn't do that. They didn't shoot well at all, but the long range shooting continues to be an issue. 15%.
Well, and going back to what Wes mentioned a moment ago, look, I don't think there are many people that expected Carolina to necessarily win that game last night because of how talented Florida is, but there's a difference between losing a game and losing a game by historic 47 points, and a lot of that does go to the effort that, Coach Paris was talking about after the game last night, where guys were just kind of giving up. Once you got down by double digits, it seemed like the lead was insurmountable. They were kind of waiting out the clock to get to the end of this thing and get it over with, and that is a big difference between like last year, right? They started off 0-13 in conference play, but I don't really feel like there were games even during that losing streak where we felt like they were just folding and giving up. And again, eventually won 2 games towards the end of the year against Texas and Arkansas to give them some kind of wins in conference play, but we weren't talking about them giving up before the month of January is over. And when you look at, the Arkansas game a couple weeks ago, what happened against A&M on Saturday, now this game against Florida, we're trending towards this team just trying to count down the seconds until the season's over, and then who knows what's going to happen. But you don't want to be at this point, not even because Saturday's the 9th game in conference play. We're not even halfway there yet, and we're already having to question the effort and the want to of this team at this point.
Yeah, I think I saw Jordan K. from the State said this was the 5th worst loss by points in University of South Carolina men's basketball history, the worst since, I think, 1999. So, I think it's one of those things, guys, where a lot of times people maybe overreact to something, or if you just get blown out, that's the worst game I've ever seen. You hear things like that, but I mean, this is just statistically is the worst South Carolina game in over 25 years at this point. And so I understand the frustration. I understand why people would be ticked off, and I don't know. I think Tyler's point there, Chris. Where does this season go at this point? Because I think we all saw. There were already a lot of concerning things. Like, we all saw, man, this might be another difficult year in SEC play. But you were maybe, if you were a super positive fan, you were trying to hold on to some hope. Hey, maybe all this just gels together. It obviously has not happened. And, Chris, you and I, we spend a lot of time on the football side studying and following roster construction. And the more we see in the transfer portal across multiple sports, man, I just think it's very, very hard to rebuild an entire roster, entire starting lineup via the portal only. And I know when you have a disappointing year like last year, it is incredibly tempting probably to try to do that. But I just think it's difficult because you don't know those guys as well as you know a team or individuals who you've recruited for 2 or 3 years and you've kind of been in that foxhole with. And so when you get to a point where things are kind of a little bit dire, you want the guys you can trust not to basically, go through the motions. And I'm not saying certainly not every kid on that court is just going through the motions, but it is certainly okay to question the effort when you get beat by 40-plus points.
Yeah, and that is a good point that y'all made both, that even in the midst of struggles, last season you're sitting there going, all right, this is not going well, but the effort's there, right? Can it turn around? And it didn't. But the thing that you could hang your hat on, and it doesn't matter it's a bottom line business, it's wins and losses. But you could go, all right, the effort's there, the guys didn't quit, Lamont didn't, lose the locker room, so to speak. They got to reboot this thing to some degree and try to figure it out. Well, now we're looking at it, and you're talking about obvious execution issues, but you're also talking about effort issues. And this isn't just like some fan-led conspiracy theory where you're going, sometimes fans will say the guys aren't trying, and you look out there and you're like, I don't buy that. They actually are. Here, it's kind of obvious, and Lamont Paris is talking about it publicly. Last night, And that's not the first time this season. So that, to your point, Wes, becomes more concerning when you're not only having execution issues, you're having effort issues, you're having guys, I mean, for all intents and purposes, Lamont basically said that guys seemed to check out before he did. That's not what you want to see in a Power 4 SEC, contest. You don't want to see that at all. So it is leading to, we've been in this spot with some other sports in the past, baseball last year, start having big picture conversations, basketball. Now you're in a bigger picture conversation of what is going to happen, because there's not a lot that you can hang your hat on from this season so far. And frankly, with what you've seen, there's not a lot of hope at this point that you can get this thing turned around. This was a game that you needed to start orchestrating that turnaround. Not only did you not get there, you weren't even close. You went in the opposite direction.
And look, we don't know what conversations are being had right now, at the athletic department with Jeremiah Donati and decisions made going forward. But we've all been around sports long enough to know when these kind of things happen in your fourth year in a program, we kind of know what comes next if things don't drastically turn around. You got 10 more games in conference play, and it would take a lot of really big wins down the stretch to really kind of change the narrative of this team, because right now it's a team that is not nearly as talented as everybody else in the conference, and now it seems like they're giving up on the season. So again, kind of seems like writing's on the wall down toward the end of the tunnel, but it's unfortunate we're here, but here we are.
Yeah, I thought guys Lamont's quote after the game was pretty pointed. There's nothing to be proud of in that effort. And this is from, one of our own three guys who got it from the press conference, I guess. There's nothing to be proud of in that effort in terms of fight. This is the second time that's happened. We did it. I think it was the Arkansas game where we saw some of that. And then at some point in every game, there's a point where you realize probably it's not going to work out for us. I'm so reluctant to admit that point has happened. He's talking about just like within a game when it seems like it's over. We had some guys more eager to admit that point had gotten there, and our play reflected it, so bad turned to worst. That's just a poor effort overall on our behalf. And so we have to, again, find ourselves in a situation where we have to respond to that. Lamont typically does give you some thoughtful responses, some thoughtful takes on the game. I thought that was a somewhat interesting one. Just kind of that point of a ball game. Anybody that's ever played a sport, you kind of get to that scenario where you're going, man, this might not be our night. And what Lamont is saying there is like, hey, I'm not always willing to give in that, hey, this is not our night. Let's keep fighting. And too many guys on the floor last night were really just ready to give up that moment a little bit too soon.
Well, they got another game coming up on Saturdays. They take on LSU over at Colonial Life Arena. Tip-off at 6 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting at 5:30 right here on 107.5 The Game. We'll switch gears over to football coming up next as we continue our position previews post-transfer portal for South Carolina football as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along here in the game.
All right, guys, we got one more big football game left, and there's still time for you to upgrade the man cave before it happens. Hit up our friends at Integrated Media, integratedmediainc.com, or go ahead, just give them a call, 803-948-8327. They've been to my house. They've been to Chris's house. Let them come to your house as well and upgrade your sports viewing experience. That could be just in your living room in terms of getting a bigger TV, hanging it on the wall, maybe hiding the wires, going with some surround sound, making it look all professional, or taking that big leap, that big step, and turning that extra room that you've always dreamed about being a man cave or media room or even home theater system and turning that into reality. They can do that for you just by you presenting your ideas. They're going to just turn it into real life, which is pretty amazing. Again, 803-948-8327 or head on over right now to integratedmediainc.com.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you here on your Thursday on the game. And as we have been doing now that, again, most all of the transfer portal stuff for South Carolina is mostly done. Still got some scholarships they can fill out, but most of the heavy lifting has been done up to this point. We're going position group by position group, taking a look at what's come in and what to expect for this upcoming year. We've done quarterback already. We've done running back, and now the most intriguing position of all, the one that's been completely overhauled
Kicker.
in the portal. Yeah, right, kicker, is the offensive line, which, again, was a huge point of contention going into this offseason after the firing of Lonnie Teasley, bringing Randy Clements. And, again, you've had most everybody, with the exception of a handful of guys, leave. You bring in completely new guys from all over the place, various levels of experience, various different offenses they've operated in. Would you describe the sentiment around the offensive line as excited, nervous, unsure? Where do you gauge where fans are at now with what we know about the offensive line to this point?
Yeah, among the fan base.
Yeah.
I don't know what word I would use. I think the fan base kind of, and I think this is a dangerous sentiment in sports. The most likely thing I've heard from fans is, well, it can't get much worse. And
Careful.
in sports, it can always get worse. Now, I don't think it will. I really don't. But it can. It absolutely can. So, to me, that's kind of the prevailing thought from a lot of people. Now, I do think there is some excitement, not even necessarily just about the players we're about to talk about, but more so about, a different sort of voice in the room, a different approach on offense. How much will it help this group that you aren't doing so much vertical kind of drop back passing game? You know what I'm saying? That you're a little bit more college offense oriented, that you're not so much in terms of NFL, like just true pass protection, right? You're still going to have to do that. But I think the number of plays you kind of are able to say, hey, that's not true pass pro. That's a little bit more RPO. That's quick game. That's not just asking your guy to protect against some of the world's best pass rushers for 5 seconds and, just go do some different things. I think the fan base that's like the people that are really kind of tuned in to that side of football are kind of excited about that part as well.
Maybe cautious optimism. That's probably the best thing, because, and look, as we've said many times, the problems with the offense were, endless last season. When South Carolina had success, tended to be with big explosive plays. It was a feast or famine offense, and of course, all too often it was the famine part of that. And there were run game issues. As Shane Beamer has pointed out, there were issues in terms of taking sacks and negative plays. Sometimes it was a back. Sometimes it was a tight end. Sometimes, we all know, it was Lenore Sellers trying to make something happen, holding the ball a little bit too long or a lot too long. But those all played in. There's also plenty of plays. When you give up that many sacks, you can't say, well, the offensive line, they weren't that big of a part of the problem. I mean, it was out of all those things, you could say the primary problem. And you go back and look at the film. I mean, I've spent some time lately going back and just actually looking at the offense in a little bit more depth last season. There were a lot of just very baseline, you didn't handle that twist correctly. You got beat one-on-one. A lot of that type of stuff happened. And it was very frustrating because you got the sense, especially with how close in some of these games they were, that it's not just a line to say, oh, they were close in some of these games. They were in several games in the fourth quarter that could have gone either way. Generally, they did not win those games. And you just get the sense of, if they could have been average on offense, could this team gotten a couple more wins at least? Probably so. That's not that far of a leap to make. So, when you're thinking about the offense, like you said, Wes, an offense that maybe is more offensive line friendly, that's one thing. You got a new offensive line coach. So just from a technique, day-to-day, studying film, all those things that go into offensive line play, you've got that. And then, of course, the personnel part of it. Jacarius Peak coming in, he has to go out and do it at South Carolina, but he's not just, oh, this is a highly rated guy. This is a guy that has literally been one of the better pass protectors in college football at the Power 4 level. So, again, not a far cry to think, hey, this guy could come in and really stabilize at least one position on the offensive line. So there's a lot of work to do, but I do sense that the fan base, if you're one of those that's saying, I'm not going to even get excited about it, I'm going to wait and see, I totally get that. That's probably the safe approach for everybody. But can you allow yourself to be cautiously optimistic in that, hey, the three major things, basically all three components of trying to get better have changed? that can give you some reason for optimism.
Well, and when you bring in as many guys as they have, of course, it's going to be open competition at all those spots. And we're going to learn through spring and summer and all that of what exactly the starting five is going to look like. But you mentioned Ja'Carrius Peak there coming over from NC State. If you had to pencil anybody in as probably the best opportunity to name a spot right now, you would say, okay, Ja'Carrius Peak probably leads the way at left tackle, and then everything else past that is a question mark. But again, legitimately one of the best players available in the portal that you were able to bring in to help you in a spot that has struggled quite a bit over the past couple of years, namely this past year with Josiah Thompson, who is coming back, and we'll see competition for the left tackle if you move him to right tackle, what you end up doing with him. But you, get, at least on paper, have addressed your most glaring issue on the offensive line as far as what one player can fix with Ja'Carrius Peak coming in.
Well, and I think a lot of the issues you have been in pass protection. And you're talking about someone who, at least by the numbers, by the analytics, the PFF, all that stuff, he excels in pass protection. So how, obviously, the offensive line is such a unique thing in sports in that they all have to come together. They all have to gel together for it to all work out. And so just adding one player is not the same as if you just add a special elite player at like running back or quarterback or something like that. But it sure helps, and it sure gives you kind of a start. And even though, yes, it is a complete sort of, we've been calling it a rebuild or reset, guys, I think the most important factor, or one of the most important factors, is going to be that you did return 6 guys. And you look at 3 of these guys have started games at South Carolina, some more than others, but I think bringing back a Shed Surratt, who, would have been highly coveted in the transfer portal, started multiple games last year at multiple positions. I look at this, if you're trying to find who are my 5 starters, in an ideal world, I think 2, maybe 3 of the starting spots are from your returning players, and I think 2, maybe 3 are from these 8 guys that you brought in via the portal. And as of right now, I think you can kind of pencil in Peak, and I think you can pencil in Poku from the newcomers. And I think you can pencil in Shed from the returning players. So there's 3 guys, right? I tend to still think a healthy, year older, new system Josiah Thompson is going to be one of your starters on the line, which would, in my opinion, you're probably going to end up with 2 guys, Shed and Josiah, as starters, maybe Josiah playing right tackle, then Peak, Poku, and who wins the starting center job? You certainly recruited Carter Miller from UCF to come in and possibly hold down that job, but he's going to have to earn it because I think there's going to be some competition there.
Yeah, I mean, Nolan Hay, a guy to watch. Nolan Hay started, the Missouri game at center, missed a good part of the season, banged up. But, again, another guy, year older, new system, new look for everybody, new opinions. I don't think you discount him either. I think that was a sneaky, nice retention for South Carolina. Maybe he just ends up being a depth guy, 6th guy, 7th guy, an 8th guy. But I don't discount him in that race either. And center, obviously a key position, especially in Kendall Briles' offense. So that's one that I've definitely got my eye on in terms of position battle.
Again, the offensive line, the most intriguing position group this offseason. We'll take a look at wide receivers and tight ends coming up tomorrow as, again, we go position group by position group throughout the next couple of days. But coming up next, Bill Gunner made a specific request for me to ask Chris Clark about one specific recruit back in the day and get his story about what happened there with some original tampering in the SEC. That's coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris on your Thursday here on the game. Women's basketball in action tonight to take on Auburn. Another late tip. That'll be at 9 o'clock, which you can listen to on our sister station, B106.7 FM, with pregame coverage starting at 8:30. I mentioned before the break there, Bill Gunner made a specific request yesterday on the halftime show of something I had to ask Chris Clark about, because apparently you have good knowledge of this and some stories to tell. What does the name New Keith Richardson mean to you in reference to what happened back in the day?
The entire break, I was like getting nervous, palms sweaty. I'm like, what am I going to be asked about? And can I give an answer? Can I remember, first of all?
Yeah.
And can I actually say my answer?
Well, he said you would know this very well.
I should have known. Wes, you'll have to help me out on this. So Nukes was a prospect that G.A. Mangus was recruiting for South Carolina. Mangus had so many like legendary recruitments, I feel like. He actually recruited Deion Barnes, who went to Penn State, but really thought hard about the Gamecocks. But Nukes was from an area of Florida called, what'd you say, Wes?
Pahokee, right?
Pahokee, called the Muck. That was the kind of nickname of that area, the Muck. And Gamecocks were pretty heavily involved with him. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the one that Lane Kiffin, when he was at Tennessee, accused. Was it he accused Urban Meyer of cheating, I think?
For calling him when he was on Tennessee's campus on a visit.
Which is, I think he said was a violation, which is actually not a violation. How silly does that sound, by the way? It was silly at the time, because I think he said it to like a booster club group or something like that. You know, just get everybody all riled up. Yeah, he tried to call Nukes Richardson while he was on our campus, which is a violation, by the way. And the rules changed so much, I don't think it was even a violation at the time. How crazy does that sound now with all the stuff we're dealing with? Like kids getting texted pictures of contracts while they're in class or in the middle of a workout at another school from the head coach of another school.
Allegedly.
Hey, allegedly. You know, and now, you called that guy when you weren't supposed to. It's like a big who cares. But yeah, Nukes was a class of 2009, Wes, I think that was.
Yep.
That was a long time ago, man. That was a fascinating one.
Wasn't there some drama on signing day as well in terms of who he was actually going to sign with? Like, I feel like this was back in the Fax It In days. Like, I feel like it was a battle to the very end there, but I don't remember the details because South Carolina was not in it anymore. But there was a stretch where South Carolina was the full-on favorite for Nukes, and that, boys and girls, would have been the same year that South Carolina signed one Alshon Jeffrey, who actually was highly rated and highly ranked, but was probably even a little bit underrated as the number 13 wide receiver in his class.
Well, and then, you know, the crazy thing is that after all that, Lane Kiffin kicked, it was Richardson and another player kicked him off the team literally that November in 2009, the year he signed. So college career never really got off the tracks, you know, from that standpoint. But yeah, that was you know, there were still some kind of wild recruitments back in the day. They just looked different. You know, now what you hear is, you know, you hear a lot more about coming in with huge NIL deals at the end of the day, or the Pete Golding, Luke Farrelly situation that we just referenced. Like, that's what you hear nowadays. Some of the stories, the older stories, were even more fascinating. Like, I've always thought about it would be really cool to compile some of those old stories. I don't know if they'd be as shocking, but they'd be entertaining. I mean, you hear about kids, you know, a coach is going to go to so-and-so's basketball game, and then a group of people basically, you know, pick up the kid from his game so that the other coach can't get there, you know, signing somebody out of class so that Nick Saban can't come to their school and visit with them. I mean, the old Yeah, the old cash drop. Like you hear about a lot of those things, and they just look different. But there were definitely some fascinating recruitments from back in the day.
Well, and it is funny now that we're in this era of NIL where everything's above the table, and we're talking about millions of dollars being handed to high school kids that haven't played a snap of college football. It's made people romanticize about that era of college recruiting. It was so much better then. Like, not really. It's just everything was more hush hush, and you only heard what information got out. But recruiting's always been a very dirty business, and again, everybody did what they had to do to get those guys in and exploit whatever gray areas they could. But there's never been anything such as wholesome recruiting in the last 50 to 60 years of college football.
Yeah, because that is the lifeblood of your program, and if you don't have good players, you're not going to win games. And so obviously when you incentivize the fact that you are, you have to have good players, you incentivize recruiting wins. And then I always thought what sort of drives this too, guys, is that think about, especially back then, you're recruiting a kid, there was no transfer portal, you're recruiting a kid for 3 years maybe. And then you get down to the very, very end. Oh, wait, he's going to Tennessee over my dead body. You know what I'm saying? Like, it gets down to like, I'm going to do, because you're talking about highly competitive individuals as well. That's when, well, wait, they did that to get him? No. I'm going to do whatever I have to do. And so you have these sort of historic battles. I tell you what, the late, great Brad Lawing, I'm sure Chris had some stories, man. And GA gave a couple of good stories on the podcast with Pat DeMarco and Steven Garcia. Would love to sit down with him and dive into some of those things. I know you've talked to Ellis Johnson some about some stories. If somebody did just a South Carolina sort of tell-all on, you could get some good stuff on the Clowney recruitment, the Stephon Gilmore recruitment, the Lattimore recruitment. Like, there was some good stuff there back in the day.
No doubt. Yeah. Ellis Johnson absolutely has some classics because, Ellis Johnson recruited, Gilmore, the Clowney recruitment that you referenced. I mean, that one was because Clowney was actually not that big into recruiting, like he didn't like you hear stories of Clowney, like a coach would come to see him and he just like wasn't even there. He's like, I'm not home right now. I'm not. He wasn't that big on it because he was just getting. I mean, you can imagine. I mean, I've told my Ed Orgeron story. Ed Orgeron at Southern Cal, he comes down to see him. I mean, it was as much of a circus as you could get. But I remember Ellis Johnson told me that, he went out, I think with Steve Spurrier, and went to Rock Hill to go see Clowney. And they're going to, meet the mom, I think maybe Clowney's grandfather. And, they're there, and Clowney's not there. And they can't find him. He's an hour and a half late. Well, another college coach had gone to Rock Hill and found out that Clowney was at the barber shop, and he, picked him up, basically. I shouldn't say kidnap, but, he scooped him up and just drove him around Rock Hill in his car so that nobody could find him, trying to convince him to come to his school. So, a lot of we've actually lost because it has become more transactional. It's more about like, okay, like, yeah, I like the school, I like the academics, I like the coaches, but like a lot of it is about what does the NIL contract look like? And so some of those just kind of charming, I guess you could say, little stories that you hear, they're still there a little bit, but they've kind of lost their luster a little bit. I like the older days from that standpoint because when you heard crazy stories like that, they really, resonated.
Guys, who was the number one recruit, according to ESPN, in the 2009 class? Anybody just off the top? No.
Was that, oh, dang it. What's his name? That was at US Southern Cal, the quarterback. Why can't I think of his name? Was that 2009?
Yes.
Matt Barkley?
Yes.
That's a good pull, Tyler.
Good job, guys. I can't find, because obviously On3 bought Rivals. I'm trying to see who was Rivals number one. I can't actually find it, but Matt Barkley in, I guess, what is a makeshift industry ranking. We didn't actually have this now, but retroactively averaging, it would have been ESPN and Rivals. It was Barkley number 1 overall and number 1 quarterback, obviously. Russell Shepard, LSU wide receiver, was way up there in the rankings. Trent Richardson was that year. Manti Te'o.
Speaking of recruiting, by the way, there's a familiar name that's re-entered the South Carolina recruiting lexicon. We'll discuss that next to wrap up the hour here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Wrapping up the hour here on your Thursday on the game. And since we are talking about recruiting and talking about the good old days, I figured it'd be a great time to bring up this name. Chris, what year did you start recovering recruiting for South Carolina?
It's funny, we were talking about the 2009 class. That was actually kind of sort of my first year. I think you could say 2008.
Okay.
My first year as a full-timer was 2009, but it was in May. So,
All right.
the Stephon Gilmore, Alshon Jeffrey class had already signed. I was kind of part-timing it 08, early 09. So around that range.
So you would not have covered this guy's recruitment, but you would have covered him being on the team, that being Captain Munnerlyn, Sr., who was at South Carolina from 2006 to 2009. How does it make you feel that you're now covering the recruiting of Captain Munnerlyn Jr.?
Wild. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Crazy. I mean, because Cap was in the 2006 class, I want to say, for South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
2-star recruit out of, I think, the Mobile area. I think Murphy High School. True 2-star, not the, hey, I was a 2-star and he was really like the number 30 prospect in the country. True 2-star who ended up playing very well on special teams and at defensive back for USC. Played in the NFL for quite a while, coaching now, so he's done really well for himself. It was kind of wild because when J.C. Horn was getting recruited, J.C. was in the 2018 class. I went to Atlanta. I was at his school on his signing day for his signing day ceremony. And I'm sitting there going, man, and, keep in mind, this was 8 years ago at this point.
Right.
Like, dude, I think I even told JC at the announcement, I'm like, man, I'm getting old. I used to watch your dad. Like, his dad tormented the Carolina Panthers playing for the Saints. Joe Horn, phenomenal receiver in the NFL. I'm going, man, I'm already to that point. I am covering, guys that I grew up watching their sons. I'm covering those guys. Well, we've now advanced a level. We've advanced a level in the game. Final boss. I'm covering guys. Maybe not the final boss, because Tyler, depending on how long I can keep doing this, it's really going to be bad if it's like, here's Captain Munnerlyn
The third. Yeah. Hey.
And I will be like, I covered your grandpa when he was a recruit in high school. That's going to be bad.
That would be pretty great. How many second generations, or how many two generations have you covered, like the dad and the son, up to this point?
Oh, man.
Maybe not necessarily always guys that came to Carolina necessarily, but still were in the recruiting coverage for you.
Yeah, I mean, here and there, there's probably, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some. There's certainly been, there's been a handful. I remember, I think the 2010, if I'm not mistaken, the 2010 Bama South Carolina game, I think Dre Kirkpatrick was one of the DBs out there. And, he had an offer from Carolina. I don't think super heavily in the game, but maybe visited. And then, he has a son who I think already signed with Bama, and I think Carolina offering him too. So there's a handful of those guys, but it's like, man. But yeah, if it ever gets to the point where I'm covering I remember your grandpa, I covered him. Like, and it's worse when the grandpa's in high school.
Sure.
Like, not just I watched him. The Joe Horn. Okay, he was in the NFL. Captain Munnerlyn, covered him in college and remembered him from high school recruiting. That one.
Yeah.
That one got me.
Yeah, we're actually going to be joined by Captain Munnerlyn at 2:15 today on the halftime show to not only talk about his son, obviously, but his time at Carolina, his time with the Carolina Panthers, and the great career that he had. But and again, I'm still early in my sports media career, but it is kind of crazy to see some of these guys that have now been retired from the league as long as he has. But like, man, I remember watching him growing up as a kid for all those years with the Panthers, and now his son's getting set to maybe come to Carolina here in a couple years.
Yeah, you got any Georgia ones that this has happened to?
Oh, man.
So far? Justice Haynes, did you watch
that?
What era was that? Was before you?
Yeah, Veron Haynes was early 2000s.
That's right.
So I was really, really young at that point in time. I can't think of many off the top of my head. I saw somebody post the picture the other day of like Drew Bobo as a baby with Mike on the staff in the early 2000s. That's a little bit different though. But no, I've never run into any of like, wow, that guy having a kid that now I'm talking about being a recruit or whatever. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm sure it's coming, but not yet.
Yeah, it's coming. I'm telling you, man, the grandpa thing,
Yeah.
it's that one, that one's going to, if that ever happens, that's going to hit, which, I'd probably have to do this for, I don't know.
Yeah.
It depends, it depends on the timing for everything, but
you got time.
I got a little time. It's probably going to happen at some point, and then we can lament it on air.
I'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Halftime show up next here on the game.